The studio lights were bright, almost blinding. The crowd clapped, laughed, and whistled as the cameras rolled across the famous late-night stage. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fun. But behind the curtain, Sylvester Stallone stood, still hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. His face was calm, but his mind was not. Producers moved quickly around him. A young assistant passed him a bottle of water. Another adjusted his mic. Everyone smiled, but none of it felt real. Stallone's publicist leaned in and whispered, "They said it's just banter. Fun stuff. Nothing serious." He nodded slowly, still not smiling. Few moments later, someone handed him a stack of cue cards. They weren't for him, they were Kimmel's notes, but he glanced at them when the assistant wasn't looking. His eyes narrowed. One line caught his attention. Eastern Europe, 1996. Missing files. His stomach dropped. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't fun. Suddenly, the laughter from the studio felt like static in his ears. Something was wrong. Then the music kicked in. Ladies and gentlemen, Sylvester Stallone. He walked out, waving to the crowd, smiling with his mouth but not with his eyes. The cheers were loud. Jimmy Kimmel stood with his usual smirk, arms wide open. "The legend himself," he said, pulling Stallone in for a hug. They both sat. The music faded. The show began. For the first few minutes, it was normal. Jokes about aging, about boxing, about Hollywood sequels. Stallone nodded, played along, even laughed once or twice. But then something shifted. Kimmel leaned forward with that playful glint in his eye and said, "You know, you disappeared for a while in the 90s. Vanished. Some say you were off doing something a little more covert." The audience chuckled. Stallone didn't. Kimmel grinned wider. "Come on, Sly, Eastern Europe, CIA friends. Secret files, rings a bell." There was laughter again, but this time it was nervous. People didn't know if this was part of the bit or something else. Stallone stared straight ahead. His face turned stone cold. No blink, no twitch. "That's not funny," he said softly. Kimmel leaned back, clearly surprised. "Just messing around, man." But Stallone didn't relax. He looked straight at the camera, then back at Kimmel. "This was personal," he muttered. Then he stood up. The crowd went quiet. The tension was thick like smoke. For a second, no one moved. Stallone pulled off his mic, dropped it on the chair, and walked off the stage. Kimmel sat frozen. The band tried to play something light, but the mood had already collapsed. The audience murmured, unsure if they had just seen a stunt or something. Very real. Backstage, the chaos exploded. Producers shouted into headsets. Cameras kept rolling. Stallone pushed through the crew without a word. His publicist followed, whispering, "Wait, talk to me." He didn't stop. Security asked if he was okay. He nodded, but didn't speak. Outside the studio, the paparazzi were waiting. They caught the moment Stallone stormed into a black SUV and slammed the door. Within seconds, phones buzzed across the world. "Stallone walks out on Jimmy Kimmel Live." The clip hit social media before the show even ended. Back inside the studio, Kimmel looked uncomfortable. He tried to smile. Well, that took a turn. The audience gave a weak laugh. The show cut to commercial. In a private room, Kimmel sat with his head in his hands. One of the producers entered, pale-faced. "We just got a call," she said quietly. "Someone from D.C. asked for the raw footage." Kimmel looked up. "From where in D.C.? She shook her head. "Didn't say, just said to send it." No questions. He sat back, trying to piece it together. "They told me it was a joke," he said. "They said he'd laugh. Thought he's done this stuff before." The producer's face stayed still. They wanted that question asked. On air. Meanwhile, miles away, Stallone sat in the back of his SUV, staring out the window. His phone rang. He didn't answer it. Then it buzzed again. This time he looked. A name flashed across the screen. Marcus read. He hadn't seen that name in over 20 years, he answered. I saw the show, the voice said calmly. They pulled the trigger. Stallone didn't speak. They're waking the past, the voice continued. We need to meet. The line went dead. Stallone leaned back in the seat, eyes heavy. Outside, Los Angeles flashed past in colors and lights. But something darker had returned, something he thought was buried for good. And now the whole world had seen the first crack. The show was just the beginning. The real story was coming next. The black SUV slid through the streets of Los Angeles like a shadow avoiding the spotlight. Inside, Stallone sat in silence, his eyes locked on nothing in particular. The call with Marcus read echoed in his mind. They're waking the past. That wasn't just a warning. It was a message from the old world, one he had left behind decades ago. He remembered the cold streets of Prague, the frozen air, the tight black coat he wore when they told him it was just a morale visit, meet the troops, shake some hands, pose for a few cameras. But that wasn't what happened. That night in 1996 was something else entirely. And now someone wanted to drag it out into the open. His driver spoke. Mr. Stallone, do you want to go back to the hotel? No, Stallone said. Take me to the Beverly View. Use the back entrance. No one sees me. Yes, sir. As the car turned, Stallone unlocked his phone and opened a secure messaging AP1 that Marcus had forced him to install all those years ago, just in case. There was a location pin waiting an hour from now. Quiet rooftop bar under. Renovation, no cameras, no eyes. Just the wind and the truth. Meanwhile, back at the Jimmy Kimmel studio, producers moved like ants in panic. Phones rang nonstop. Emails poured in. The show's main control room buzzed with chaos. A junior editor was editing out the final segment when one of the lead producers stopped him. Leave it, she said. They want the full cut. Who's they? The editor asked. Someone in D.C., she answered. Could be Homeland, could be something else. Jimmy Kimmel sat alone in his dressing room, staring at the screen of his laptop. He played the footage over and over. Again, Stallone's face, the silence. The words, this was personal. It didn't feel like acting. His door opened. A man in a suit entered. He didn't knock, didn't smile. Mr. Kimmel, he said. I need your cooperation. That question about Eastern Europe, who gave it to you? I don't know who you are, Jimmy replied. The man held up a small card. It had no name, just a black eagle embossed into it. I'm someone who needs answers, the man said, because that question was never supposed to go public. Not like this. And if you don't tell us where it came from, someone will assume you knew what you were doing. Jimmy leaned back. They gave me the card just before we went on. Said it was a punchline, just a joke. It wasn't a joke, the man said. It was bait. He turned and left without another word, crossed the city at the Beverly View. Rooftop Marcus Red stood alone, looking out over the skyline. He wore a long coat, hands in pockets, like he hadn't aged a day since 1996. He didn't smile when Stallone arrived. You made it, Marcus said. I didn't have a choice, Stallone replied. Marcus handed him a small flash drive. They're digging, Sly. That op in Prague there, rewriting it, making it look like you were the one running the whole show. That's not true, Stallone said. I wasn't even armed. Marcus nodded. But people don't care about truth. They care about what trends. You walking off that stage, that was the trigger. They've been sitting on the story for years, waiting for a way to bury you with it. Stallone took the drive, looked at it. Why now? Marcus looked out at the city again. 'Cause there's an election coming. And someone wants to make sure the public sees Hollywood heroes as part of the machine. You're this symbol, Sly. And symbols are easier to burn than men. Stallone pocketed the drive. What's on it? Proof, Marcus said. The original mission orders. The real target. And who signed off on it? It wasn't you. If we don't act fast, they'll pin it on you anyway. At that moment, Stallone's phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Senator Everett Lorne calls for a federal investigation into Stallone's past military ties. He showed it to Marcus. Looks like they've already started, Stallone said. Marcus's face darkened. Lorne's dangerous. Old connections, deep pockets, and he's desperate for power. If he thinks you can be used, he'll keep pushing until you break. Stallone took a deep breath. So what do? We fight it, Marcus said. But not with bullets. With truth. You need to go public. Not through their shows. Not their networks. You sit down with someone who can't be bought. Someone with reach. Who? Stallone asked. Marcus smiled faintly for the first time. You ever heard of Lena Haddad? The name hit like thunder. She was one of the most feared investigative journalists on the planet, known for exposing war crimes, regime secrets, and things people weren't supposed to see. Al Jazeera's rising star, unafraid, unwound. She's been hunting Project Midas for 5 years, Marcus said. You're the missing piece. Talk to her before they make you the story. Stallone looked out at the dark city. Somewhere. Out there, a story had already begun to spread like wildfire about a movie star with a secret past, about a government betrayal, about something that should have stayed buried. But he was done hiding. They want a story. Stallone said, I'll give them one. Rain tapped lightly against the windows of a narrow hotel room in downtown Los Angeles. The television was on, volume low, showing footage from the night before Stallone storming off Jimmy Kimmel's set. The clip replayed over and over. Pundits speculated. Commentators dissected his every word. On the screen, one headline repeated across every channel. What was Stallone hiding? Far across the ocean in Doha, journalist Lena Haddad sat in the middle of her office at Al Jazeera's International Investigations Unit. Her desk was stacked with folders, hard drives, and a large corkboard filled with pins and strings stretching from Washington to Budapest to Sarajevo. In the center of it all, in black marker, were 2 words, Project Midas. Her assistant rushed in. You need to see this. Lena turned toward the screen as the Kimmel clip played. She frowned, then watched it again, this time slower, frame by frame. He froze the moment Kimmel mentioned Eastern Europe. She said, that wasn't acting, that was fear. Her assistant nodded. And it gets worse. Senator Everett Lorne just called for a congressional investigation. He claims Stallone was part of a covert mission that caused civilian deaths in Yugoslavia. Lena stood still for a second. Then, with calm intensity, she said, he's the thread. She opened the locked drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope marked due. Not release unconfirmed. Inside was a declassified memo she had received from an anonymous source nearly a year earlier. The document was blurry but referenced an asset codenamed Echo One. Involved in a failed 1996 OP in Belgrade, the initials SS were in the margin, redacted badly. Until now, she hadn't been able to prove it was Stallone. Now she could. Meanwhile, in Washington, Senator Everett Lorne sat in his office surrounded by aides and consultants. News of his public statement had gone viral. Fundraising was spiking. His next campaign event had doubled in size. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. Keep pushing the Hollywood traitor angle, he ordered. America's sick of elites. Stallone walks off a comedy show, and now suddenly he's a victim. No, he's not. He's a weapon we can use. One aide whispered, what if the files surface? Lorne glared. Then we bury them, or we bury whoever leaks them. Get our cyber team watching the foreign press. If Al Jazeera gets too close, we cut their access. Back in Los Angeles, Stallone was preparing for something he hadn't done in decades, a real interview. No rehearsals, no scripts, no audience. Just questions and truth. Marcus Red had arranged it. Lena Haddad had agreed. They would meet in a neutral location within 48 hours. But even as plans formed, pressure mounted. Stallone's hotel room was being watched. A security camera in the hallway had mysteriously gone offline for 3 minutes that morning. When it came back, there was a scratch on the door. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to send a message. Marcus met him in a parking garage, far from prying eyes. He handed Stallone a burner phone. "They're probing the perimeter," Marcus said. "No break-ins, no bugs, just presence. It's how Lorne's people work. Intimidation." "I'm not scared of him," Stallone replied. "I'm scared of being made into something I'm not." "You already are," Marcus said. "But if you tell your side before they finish writing theirs, we still have a chance." Stallone looked at the flash drive again. He'd reviewed it 3 times. It contained black and white footage from the mission. Shaky helmet cam shots, cold wind, a group of armed men. A young Stallone shouting over gunfire. The mission had gone wrong, civilians caught in the crossfire. But the orders had come from Washington. He was just there to get out a diplomat's son who was being held by paramilitaries. Now, they were spinning it like he had led the assault. Marcus leaned in. "There's something you should know. Lorne was on the Oversight Committee in '96. His signature is on one of those deployment forms." Stallone's face hardened. "So he's trying to cover his tracks by using me as a distraction." Marcus nodded. "Classic political move. Make noise, point fingers, rewrite history before the truth hits airwaves." The 2 men stood in silence for a moment. Stallone said, "What about Lena? Can we trust her?" "She's a journalist," Marcus said. "She doesn't trust anyone. But she's got one thing Lorne doesn't: integrity." That night, Lena landed in Los Angeles under a false name. She was used to traveling like this: disguises, code names, hidden gear. She checked into a modest hotel and immediately opened her laptop. Stallone had sent her one message: "I'll talk, but only live. No edits. The world gets the whole thing." Lena smiled. That was what she had hoped he'd say. She typed back, "We go live in 36 hours. Make it count." Back at the studio, Jimmy Kimmel was silent. He hadn't been back on air since Stallone walked out. The producers begged him to return, to apologize, to laugh it off. But he couldn't. He had just learned that the card with the Eastern Europe joke wasn't written by his team. It had been faxed in from an untraceable machine. No name, no number, just the question. And the moment it aired, his show stopped being comedy. It became a weapon. He sat at his desk and wrote a letter, not to the network, not to the fans, to Stallone. It read, "They used me. I'm sorry. Tell the truth. I'll back you up." He folded it, sealed it, and handed it to a courier. The truth was starting to move. And so were the enemies trying to stop it. ChatGPT said. The hotel room was dark except for the soft glow of a laptop screen. Lena Haddad sat cross-legged on the bed, headphones on, watching the raw mission footage for the 10th time. The camera, shaky and pixelated, captured brief flashes of gunfire, shouting in multiple languages, and the distant sound of children crying. At one point, Stallone appeared on-screen helmetless, crouching behind a broken wall, his face pale, eyes wide. He wasn't commanding anyone. He wasn't armed. What like a man who had been lied to and realized it too late. She paused the video and leaned back. He was telling the truth. Her phone buzzed. A text from her producer in Qatar. "Be careful. Interpol flagged an inquiry into your travel logs. Someone's watching your movements." She sighed, closed her laptop, and began packing her gear. The interview location had been changed twice already. The final decision: an abandoned airport hangar just outside Burbank. No signals, no cameras. Just 2 chairs and a generator-powered light. But while Lena packed, someone else moved in silence across the hotel rooftop. Dressed in black, face hidden, the figure carried a small scanner device and a narrow black briefcase. He moved toward the roof vent directly above Lena's room. At the same time, down in the parking lot, Marcus Red waited in a nondescript rental car. He glanced at the building, then at his watch. Something felt off. He reached for his phone and dialed Lena. She picked up. "Get out of the room. Now," he said. "What?" "Roof. I see movement. Grab only the drive and your phone. Leave everything else." She didn't question it. Years of working in war zones had taught her to trust instinct. She grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it into her jacket, and slid toward the door. As she opened it, the ceiling vent above her cracked slightly, releasing a tiny clicking noise. She didn't look back. By the time she reached the stairwell, Marcus was already inside the building. They met on the third-floor landing. "We need to move," he said. "What was on the roof?" She asked. "A signal interrupter. Could have been a bug. Could have been something worse." They made it to the car and pulled out of the lot just as a black SUV pulled in behind them. Marcus took sharp turns, weaving through side streets, cutting through traffic. It wasn't until 15 minutes later that the tail finally vanished. "They're not just watching," Lena said. "They're trying to silence this. They're scared," Marcus replied. "That's good." Meanwhile, Stallone waited inside the hangar. The place smelled of rust, oil, and old dust. He sat alone, his fingers tapping nervously against the arm of a steel chair. In front of him stood 2 empty camera tripods and a single soft light. He could hear the wind howling through broken windows. This wasn't a set. This was war. A rumble in the distance. Marcus's car. He stood. The car parked and Lena stepped out, wind pushing her hair across her face. She walked in slowly, carrying her bag and the flash drive. "You ready?" she asked. Stallone nodded. 30 minutes later, the interview began. There were no flashy lights, no editing crew, just 2 people, a pair of cameras, and the raw, unfiltered truth. Lena's voice was calm. "Tell me about Project Midas." Stallone looked into the camera. His voice was steady. "In 1996, I was asked to visit a NATO base outside Belgrade. I thought I was going to meet soldiers, boost morale, pose for pictures. What I didn't know was that they were running a covert op during my visit, one that involved extracting a diplomat's child being held hostage by rogue forces." He took a breath. "I was told it was safe, that I'd never be near the action. But things went wrong. The intel was bad. I got caught in the middle. I saw civilians die. I saw things I can't forget. And when I came back to the States, I was told to forget it ever happened." Lena asked, "Did you participate in the mission?" "No," Stallone said firmly. "I didn't carry a weapon. I didn't order anything. I was a cover. They used my fame to distract local attention. I didn't realize it until it was too late." She leaned forward. "And who signed off on the mission?" "He pulled out." A printed copy of the deployment form, highlighted in red, was the signature of Senator Everett Lorne, then a junior member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. "He knew," Stallone said. The sun had not yet risen over the Los Angeles skyline when the video went live. Lena Headey's raw, unedited interview with Sylvester Stallone hit the Al Jazeera global feed at 5 a.m. Doha time. Midnight in the U.S., by the time most Americans woke up, the story had already gone viral. The title was simple but explosive. Stallone breaks his silence, Project Midas exposed. Within an hour, hashtags like #Project Midas, #StalloneTruth, and #Lauren Lied were trending worldwide. News anchors scrambled to explain what viewers had just seen. Stallone's tearless but emotional recounting of the 1996 mission had struck a nerve. It wasn't just a Hollywood headline anymore. It was political. CNN went live with a special segment. NBC called it the biggest intelligence scandal involving a civilian in U.S. history. Fox News asked whether Stallone's involvement was heroic or criminal. But more importantly, questions were being asked loudly and everywhere. In Washington, Senator Everett Lorne watched the video from his private office. His phone didn't. "Stop buzzing. Aides were in full damage control. This is going to sink us," one aide said. "The signature's there, sir. It's your name on that deployment order." Lorne stood up and turned off the screen. "We deny everything. About the video? It's fake. Foreign interference, Al Jazeera propaganda. Leak it to friendly media. Get them spinning. By midday, the White House issued a statement. We take these allegations seriously and are conducting an internal review. That was political code. No one was taking chances anymore. Back in Los Angeles, Stallone sat in a quiet cafe with Marcus Red and Lena Haddad. The place was empty, a private reservation. No cameras, no cell signals. Just 3 people and a storm that had already begun. They're calling it treason, Marcus said, showing Stallone a tabloid cover. Lorne's camp is doubling down. Stallone didn't flinch. Let them. Lena put down her coffee. You do know what happens next, right? Yeah, Stallone said. They try to discredit me. Say I lied. Say it's a performance. Then they attack you. Maybe try to shut down Al Jazeera in the U.S. Marcus nodded. Which is why we're not stopping here. He opened his laptop and pulled up another Filan encrypted folder Lena hadn't seen yet. What's that? She asked. The rest of Midas, Marcus said. The missions that followed, they used the same tactics. Different actors, different stars. No one talked because no one ever found out. Stallone leaned forward. You mean there were more? At least 4, Marcus said. 1 in Sudan, 1 in Chechnya, and 1 right here in the U.S. False flag drill disguised as a Hollywood fundraiser. Lena stared at the screen. And you have proof? Marcus nodded. Enough to make what we just released look like the trailer. Outside, cameras had begun to gather at the edge of the block. Word had gotten out. Stallone had been spotted. Dozens of reporters waited in the heat, desperate for comment. Inside the cafe, Lena received a message from her editor in Doha. Qatar Embassy says U.S. State Department filed protest. They want you out within 48 hours. We're arranging an exit. Stallone looked at her. You going to run? She shook her head. I've faced worse. He smiled. So have I. Back in Washington, Senator Lorne was losing control. Press had started asking about his 1996 travel records. An investigative journalist unearthed an old photo Lorne in a NATO base in Eastern Europe. Just days before the operation in question, he had denied ever being there. The story was collapsing. To fight back, Lorne scheduled an emergency press conference. He stood on the Capitol steps, flanked by advisors. Flashbulbs popped as he began his statement. I want to be absolutely clear, he said. Sylvester Stallone was never authorized to speak on classified matters. What he is doing is irresponsible, dangerous, and potentially criminal. This so-called interview is foreign disinformation. A reporter shouted, Did you sign the mission order? Lorne ignored the question. But inside the press tent, something happened no one expected. Jimmy Kimmel walked up to the front row and handed out copies of his personal letter, the one he had written to Stallone. The letter admitted that the question about Eastern Europe had been sent to his studio from an anonymous source. It wasn't a joke. It was planted. The moment it aired, federal agents contacted his producers. Kimmel confirmed it all. The press turned on Lorne instantly. You planted the question, someone shouted. You tried to trap him? Lorne froze. His face twitched. He turned and walked away without answering another word. The conference was over. That night, Stallone returned to television, but not as a guest. He hosted a live special with Lena Haddad and Marcus Red, broadcast globally on a secured stream with Al Jazeera. No commercial breaks, no network sponsors. The show was called The Price of Silence. For 1 hour, they played all the footage, the helmet cam video, deployment orders, and the timeline of Senator Lorne's involvement. Former intelligence officers appeared anonymously. Whistleblowers submitted voice recordings. The broadcast reached over 180 million viewers in the first 24 hours. And in the final moments, Stallone looked into the camera and said, You were never supposed to hear this story. I was never supposed to tell it, but I won't be used again. Not by them. Not by anyone. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. Outside the studio, the world was changing. And somewhere, in a quiet room in Washington, Senator Lorne made a call. "We have a new problem," he said into the phone. A voice on the other end replied, "Then eliminate it." The line went dead. ChatGPT said, "The morning after the broadcast, Washington, D.C. was in shock." The sun rose over a city frozen by silence. Congressional inboxes were flooded. CIA offices went into partial lockdown. Somewhere beneath the Capitol, a secure meeting of senior intelligence officials was called. The subject was no longer just Project Midas, it was Stallone himself. Inside a blacked-out SUV in Los Angeles, Stallone stared out the window. The city moved as if nothing had happened. But he could feel the eyes, the watchers, the weight of what he had said. Lena sat beside him, reviewing encrypted files. Marcus had handed her hours earlier. "There's one more location," she whispered. "Mexico." 2002. The files say you were injured during a private humanitarian shoot, but this says it was a retrieval mission. Civilian scientists, classified. Tech, never reported. Stallone didn't look at her. "I don't remember much from that one. They gave me something before we went in. Drugs, or like forget-me gas. Whatever it was, it made sure we couldn't talk, even if we wanted to." Marcus, sitting in the front seat, turned around. That mission was run directly by Lorne before he was a senator. He was still with Covert Tech Command. I think it was their dry run for what became Midas. Lena looked over the documents again. "We published this, and it proves Stallone wasn't just a rogue participant, he was manipulated. Controlled, maybe even experimented on." The car pulled into an underground parking garage. Marcus had secured an off-grid studio for the next drop. No internet, no phone signals, just cables, analog recorders, and a satellite uplink hardwired to Al Jazeera's mainframe. But as they stepped out of the SUV, a black van appeared at the garage entrance. Marcus reacted first, back in the car now. But it was too late. Men in civilian clothes, but clearly trained, stepped out. No badges, no hesitation. One of them raised a hand. "Mr. Stallone, you need to come with us. Who are you?" Marcus asked, stepping between them. "Federal Task Force." The man lied. "National Security." "Executive Directive." Stallone stared at him. "You're not federal. You're hired." That's when the man reached into his coat. Stallone moved faster than anyone expected. One punch. Precise, dropped the man instantly. Chaos exploded. Lena ducked behind the car. Marcus grabbed Stallone's arm and they ran for the side stairwell, boots echoing behind them. Shots were fired, none aimed to kill, but enough to create fear. Warning shots. This was a message. They made it to the stairwell. Marcus slammed the door shut behind them and bolted it. "They're not here to arrest us," he said, breathless. "They're here to disappear us." Stallone looked at him. "We need to release the Mexico footage now." "No," Lena said firmly. "Not yet. If we release it while they're hunting us, we'll lose control of the story. We need a failsafe, somewhere they can't reach." Marcus nodded. "I know a guy. Used to run a private server farm in Iceland." Us. "Me, we get the footage, there it goes global, mirrored instantly. No takedowns, then let's go." Stallone said, "We leave now." Hours later, a small plane left a private airstrip outside LA. Its passengers were not listed on any manifest. The plane flew low, fast, avoiding major radar paths. Destination Reykjavik. Back in D.C., Senator Lorne watched grainy CCTV footage of the parking garage standoff. He turned to his aide. "They made it out." "Yes, sir. Stallone's not in the hospital. That means he's still moving." Lorne walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a red folder. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white. It showed a man in military fatigues. His face was covered, but the body language was unmistakable. "Stallone, this is from Mexico, isn't it?" Lorne asked. "Yes, sir." Lorne placed the photo on the desk. Then send the Phoenix protocol. His aide hesitated. That's extreme. It's never been used domestically. Send it, Lauren said coldly. We end this before it becomes doctrine. Meanwhile, Stallone's team landed safely in Iceland. The cold was harsh, biting through layers of clothing, but the isolation was perfect. No handlers, no agents. The skies above Iceland were calm, but inside the cold bunkered server room, tension was rising. News outlets across Europe were picking up the story. Headlines exploded. Stallone CIA files leak. U.S. Senator named in Black Ops program. Memory wiped. Truth buried. The Midas Project exposed. The American public was waking up to a different kind of mourning. CNN ran loops of Stallone's walkout from Kimmel's set. But now, that moment wasn't just celebrity drama, it was a coded warning. A battle cry. Back in D.C., congressional aides whispered. Senators distanced themselves from Lorne. The White House issued a statement calling the leak deeply troubling. Behind closed doors, CIA officials scrambled to assess the damage. But someone else was watching everything unfold. A figure who hadn't been seen in 20 years. His name was Gideon. Ray, he had once overseen covert memory experiments in the Balkans before disappearing during a failed NATO raid. Rumors said he died in 2004, but he hadn't. He'd simply changed faces and sponsors. Now, inside an underground facility in Arizona, Ray examined Stallone's file. His gloved fingers tapped the classified stamp that now read uncontrolled. ASSET. He's not the problem, Ray muttered. He's the key. Beside him stood a younger agent with no name badge. Orders are to neutralize him. Not yet, Ray said. He remembers pieces. We need the rest. The agent hesitated. Lorne already activated Phoenix Protocol. The systems live. Then shut it down, Ray snapped. We don't burn Stallone. We use him. In Iceland, Lena paced inside. The cabin. You're on every screen in the world. This can't be walked back. Stallone stared at the snowy landscape. I don't want to walk it back. I want to finish it. Marcus, sitting by the laptop, frowned. We've got a ping. It's an anonymous message. Look, on screen, a string of numbers and letters. Then GWRAY, alive. Location attached. Gideon Ray, Lena said quietly. The man who started. Midas. Someone wants us to find him, Marcus added. Stallone nodded slowly. Then let's give him a visit. They flew low and quiet, again. This time into the mountains of Arizona, following coordinates that led to an abandoned military facility. But it wasn't abandoned. Drones buzzed overhead. Surveillance sensors blinked behind brush and concrete dot. At the gate, Stallone walked. Straight into view of the camera. This is Sylvester Stallone, he said calmly. You know why I'm here? Moments later, the gate creaked open. Inside, Gideon Ray was waiting. His face was scarred, older, but his eyes burned with the same cold fire Stallone had seen in the footage from the 90s. You were the best subject. We have our had, Ray said. They wiped you clean and you still fought back. Impressive. You ruined lives, Stallone growled. Mine included. You volunteered. I was lied to. Ray smiled. Lies are currency. Truth is just. Noise. Lena stepped forward. We exposed everything. You're done. No, Ray said. You exposed a prototype. Midas was only phase 1. He walked to a metal cabinet, pulled out a folder, and threw it on the table. Inside, photographs of world leaders, celebrities, scientists, some circled in red. All of them. Marcus whispered. They're all part of phase 2. Ray confirmed. It's not about controlling memories anymore. It's about rewriting identity, global influence. You're still running this? Stallone asked. I never stopped, Ray said. That's when Stallone struck. One move, a table flipped. Gun drawn. Lena pulled out a small transmitter and smashed it onto the metal console. It lit up red. What's that? Ray demanded. Your full confession, Lena said. You've been streaming live for the past 2 minutes. Your own network turned against you. Ray's mouth fell open. You're finished, Stallone said. It's time for good. Outside, sirens wailed. International authorities, Interpol, Canadian intelligence, even NATO reps had received the live stream signal. They stormed. The complex Ray tried to run. Stallone tackled him to the ground. This was never just about me, Stallone whispered. This was about all of us. 2 days later, global headlines read, Stallone ends Black Ops nightmare architect. Of memory, war captured phase 2, dismantled after explosive confession, live stream hero or victim. Stallone's true story shocks the world. Senator Lorne was indicted on multiple counts of conspiracy, war crimes, and unlawful experimentation. His mugshot circulated faster than any Hollywood tabloid ever had. Back in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel aired a different kind of episode. He apologized on air, tears in his eyes. I thought I was being funny, he said, but I was being used. And I'm sorry to Sylvester Stallone, to my audience, and to the people affected by what came next. Weeks passed. Stallone sat on a beach, distant from everything. Lena walked up beside him, holding 2 glasses of something cold. You could do interviews now, she said. The world wants to hear more. I've said enough, Stallone replied. Let the truth speak. She nodded, then looked at him. What now? Stallone stood up, gazing at the horizon. Now I live, really live. But somewhere deep beneath an unmarked data center in Eastern Europe, a server flickered back to life. Subject, Phase 3 initiated. Status, assets, identified priority, recruit Stallone ORTER, Mayanati, 'cause some wars never really end.